I think it was not too long after I finished your course and I did a huge website reboot, and I started really blogging about my specific niche that I got a client who came in and really didn't even need to do a phone call because he knew like a lot about how I work already because he'd read all the blog posts. So it was like, wow, this is working, I guess.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Tom Bruett, a private practice entrepreneur in San Francisco. He's launched a successful practice in the last year, including a full daytime group. And he's still an intern. Isn't that impressive? We're going to talk about how he uses Facebook ads, social media, blogging, and his website to fill his practice. Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for being on Therapist Clubhouse.
Thanks for having me, Annie.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to asking you about your business. So can you tell us a little bit about your practice, starting with how long have you been in private practice?
Great. So actually in May, it'll be 1 year in private practice. I started as a private practice intern, and I'm still an intern, but I finally finished my 3,000 hours, and I'm just studying for the exam.
Yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels like it's never going to end, but it will.
It totally will. When did you finish your hours?
About a month and a half ago.
And how much are you studying?
I should be studying more, but I am doing a couple afternoons on the weekends.
I remember when I was studying, I got really kind of obsessed with it, and I studied so much that then I needed to like move my exam up a little bit because I felt like all of this stuff I'm cramming into my head, some of it's going to fall out before my exam date. And who do you see in your private practice?
So I mostly see either members of the LGBTQ community or couples.
And tell us a little bit about what your business model is. So meaning like the combination of different services. So you see individuals, you see couples, and just tell us about that.
Yeah, so it was actually, thanks to your course, kind of really refining. So even inside of the LGBTQ community, I work mostly with gay men, and gay men who are feeling a little bit not as connected as they really would like to be. Mm-hmm. And that could mean a lot of different things. Either, there's maybe some substance use going on or addiction, or people are working too much or just having trouble connecting with other gay men. Then I also work with couples and straight couples, gay couples, kind of anywhere on the spectrum. And then I also do men's groups, so gay men's groups.
Groups, plural. So how many groups do you have?
Well, I started with one group, and it was a daytime group, so it was kind of difficult to fill, but I filled it up. And then starting May 1st, I'm moving into a new office, so I'm getting my own office in Hayes Valley. And I'm moving the group to an evening group because it's a little bit easier for most people's schedules. And that group is full, so I'm thinking about adding a second group after that group.
Awesome. So it's a group particularly for gay men?
It's kind of a relationship group for gay men, and we focus on being vulnerable with other gay men and kind of dealing with shame and masculinity and all of that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool. And I know one thing that a lot of listeners are wondering right now is, how did you fill those groups?
Yeah, so it started with, because in my private practice, I was seeing the same themes come up with a lot of the gay men I was working with. So I used a couple, I started with a couple people who I was seeing individually, and they were ready to kind of move into group work. And then from there, I advertised a lot. I reached out to colleagues, and actually Facebook ads.
When you say, okay, so advertising, so Facebook ads, how did you figure that piece out?
I don't actually remember. I think it could have either been in your course or through I just trial and error.
I know the resource that I recommend that I talk about in my course is Claire Pelletreau. But so that's interesting. So you experimented and it worked.
Yeah, yeah. I tried Google Ads first,
Mm-hmm.
and that cost a lot of money and was not very effective.
Yeah, that's what I find for most therapists is like it used to be and it's become less effective.
hmm
Okay.
So I tried that, and then I tried Yelp, and that also I found to be not as effective. And then Facebook ads have been especially good for the group because they target. You can really kind of hone in on who you want to target and write really specific ads. And so I probably get, when I have the ads turned on, I probably get, I don't know, 3 or 4 calls a week.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
What's a tip that you would have for someone who wants to try Facebook ads for the first time?
I would say that first be very, very clear about who you want to target.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so whoever your right fit client is or your ideal client, and be as specific as possible.
Know right before you're going in who it is so that when you get to the targeting part of it, you can really be clear. And probably when you're even writing the ad, you can be really clear.
Yeah, because you only have 1 or 2 lines, and so your headline has to be really clear about. So I think the most effective ad I've had was around. I think the headline was, "Do you want to feel more connected?"
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a great picture of like 2 guys laughing or something like that.
When you were getting ready to create the group and when you were kind of honing in on your niche, was it scary? Was it scary to choose a niche and go after it?
Incredibly scary. I had all those fears of, am I only going to see gay men? Is this, am I limiting all the other people that I'm going to have the opportunity to work with? And I think in some ways that has been true. I've been getting a lot of gay men
Mm-hmm.
who have been reaching out to me, but I just have the kind of hope and faith that that will then expand over time to include other people I would love to work with.
One thing I find with that is that a place that people will find you who are not in your particular niche is networking. So I agree with you that over time, like as you're networking, as you're getting to know more and more people and talking to them about your work, that you can still be known for working with these gay men who have these issues around connection, but then also for you to be reminding all of those people you know personally, hey, I love to work with women. I love to work with anybody who's got these issues. Well, how'd you work through that fear? Like, how did it feel once you had kind of chosen your niche and started going after it?
So I think it felt scary right up until I started getting clients in that niche.
Yeah.
It is sort of
Sure.
just a blind faith leap, kind of hoping that it will work out. But I think it was not too long after I finished your course that I did a huge website reboot, and I started really blogging about my specific niche. That I got a client who came in and really didn't even need to do a phone call because he knew like a lot about how I work already. Because he had read all the blog posts. So it was like, wow, this is working, I guess.
Yeah. So he already was he had interviewed you and gotten a sense of how you work and all that stuff just by reading all your stuff. Tell us about sort of the nitty gritty of your therapy practice. Like this is the stuff I think a lot of therapists love to find out about. And it's hard to find this stuff out about people's therapy practices. How many sessions a week do you like to have?
So I think I'm kind of in a transition period right now. So I'm straddling working in private practice part-time, and then I also have a part-time job at Olaf Recovery Center. So I'm kind of at the tipping point of when do I need some more space in my schedule to be able to see more people in private practice. So I'm kind of figuring out how I'm going to make that transition. But I think ideally I would like to see 20 people a week and then do the 2 groups.
Okay. 20 sessions with either individuals or couples,
Mm-hmm.
and then the 2 groups. So, Tom, if you could time travel back to the beginning of your private practice, what would you tell the Tom of that time a year ago?
That's a good question. I think just relax because it's going to take time. And as long as you're doing the work and you're kind of planting the seeds, the trees will grow.
has there been a decision that you can think of that affected your business, your entrepreneurial trajectory in a big way?
I think besides taking your course early, which I really recommend because I avoided a lot of pitfalls.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, especially now I need to go back now that I'm really transitioning and look at the piece about finances because that is
Mhm.
the the bookkeeping and all of that kind of stuff, the tax, all of the nitty gritty around that is where I kind of need to focus next on.
Any other big decisions you can think of that made a big difference?
I think switching the website over. I'm a creative person, so I designed my first website myself, and it looked fine, but Cat Love through Empathy Sites it's taken so much pressure off of me. So I would recommend finding somebody outsourcing, I think, the things that you're not as skilled about.
Okay, so like focusing in on your superpowers, letting somebody else do the website, even though you are creative and even though you do have a good eye and your first website, I remember it was good. But so then even that tells me even more that this is good advice, that even if, you've got a little bit of a knack for that stuff, if it's not in your zone of genius or if it's not like one of your superpowers, then let someone else do it who that's kind of their gift.
Mm-hmm.
And take it off your plate so that you can focus on, all of this growing your group and networking and seeing clients.
Yeah, because Cat, I mean, just an example, something that would have taken me 3 or 4 days looking, on the YouTube videos to try to figure out how to put something in the sidebar here or whatever. I send Cat an email, and within a day, there's like a tutorial about how to do it myself, or Cat's done it already.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it can be kind of fun to figure that stuff out sometimes. But I think it is also, it's a really good reminder of, like, I found myself this morning trying to do something technical, trying to figure something out about like my Google services that I didn't quite understand. And then I realized I was starting to go down a rabbit hole. And I was like, okay, I think there's someone else who should be doing this, who's really going to be able to do it quickly. So yeah, sometimes it's even like catching yourself whenever that starts to happen and questioning, is this really something I should be doing right now? Yeah. And I will put the Empathy Sites information in the show notes because that's a really great resource.
Yeah, I can't say enough about it. It's definitely even so much as I had been kind of dreaming about putting a schedule now button to link my simple practice scheduling to my website, and Kat was able to do it in an instant. And
yeah.
People do. They schedule. I only allow people to schedule the phone consult, but it seems like more and more people are preferred to schedule that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I'm thinking even particularly maybe for your niche, where if someone is, struggling to connect in some way or another and they're online, it's just one less obstacle to be able to just click, schedule. All right, now I'm going to be talking to Tom soon. What's it been like? A lot of people are actually afraid to start using an online scheduler. So you're still you're just doing it with consult calls. Has there been anything negative about that transition?
So with new clients that I haven't worked with, they can just schedule the consult call. But existing clients can actually change their schedule around if they want to. And that's been, I think especially for the millennials, that's been great. And with simple practice, I think the only drawback is that you have to really make sure your availability is correct, because otherwise people will try to schedule a call and then you'll have to call them to say, okay, that time actually doesn't work for me.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I have actually on my reoccurring to-do list every week, is that I've got to go in there and just check my schedule, make sure I haven't forgotten to block off anything that has to get blocked off. Yeah. But it sounds like it's worked pretty smoothly to do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I do everything through simple practice, really. I mean, even down to the paperwork and the group agreements, and even most people pay through that. So it's really streamlined the practice.
Yeah, it's so nice. I do the same thing. Absolutely. And how in your business, How do you balance the roles of being the clinician and the CEO at the same time?
I think that the clinician, it's what I love about kind of working with people is you can just sink in. So when you're actually in the room with somebody, nothing else really matters, and I'm able to really focus on them and what's going on in their life, um, and then I think that the CEO kind of part of myself really enjoys the creativity. And so I can get excited about something and put a lot of work and energy into a new blog post, or, changing some aspect of my website, or figuring out a Facebook ad. And then I can kind of, it's just sort of switching back and forth between the two roles, I think.
Do you tend to do more of your CEO stuff on a separate day or at a scheduled time, or do you do it more organically?
I think more organically if I see I have, a couple hours. And something else that I think it was in your course that I learned, that really thinking about, okay, I have a 3-hour chunk of time here. What is it that, if I need more energy to write the blog post, do that first. And then, I can go through the rest of the to-do list as I'm, tiring out, or don't need to think as much.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like there's certain admin tasks. Like I notice there's some admin tasks that it does make sense for me to do myself, and they don't take very much energy, but I schedule them for like time when I might actually get interrupted, because it wouldn't be that bad to be interrupted when I'm doing something like that. Whereas if I'm trying to write, or like, let's say when you and I are talking right now, if I were to get interrupted, that would be much more difficult. Have you had any low or scary moments? I know it hasn't been that long, but have you had low or scary moments in your practice?
Definitely. I think especially the summer. So I opened my practice in May, and I wasn't expecting that the summer would be kind of a slow season. And for me, it was that particular year.
Of course, because you had just taken a big risk. So then it had to be like a slow time right then.
So kind of muscling through that period really took a lot of hope and faith, and I think it was thankfully I was working on a lot of the stuff, just kind of planting seeds and building my practice, so that when I was using the time in a way to work on my business that didn't involve, unfortunately, seeing that many people, but I think it's paid off in the long run.
I think that's some wisdom for people who are having a low moment, is to really use it to do the stuff that you don't necessarily have time to do when you're full. Yeah. And then that takes having some faith that you're going to be able to get more clients. Because what some people do during that time, unfortunately, is start panicking and like looking for a job. And which is fine if that's what they want. Ultimately, then of course that's great. But if they can double down on what's going to work to bring in clients, that's the best. So how do you set your goals? And how do you plan? Do you tend to plan months out or even years out? Or how do you do that?
I think that one of the big takeaways, I think, especially from after working through your course and then seeing some of the success that came from putting in all that work, was really believing in myself. And I mean, it sounds a little bit simple and cliche, but just believing that if you put the work in and you believe in yourself and you nurture yourself, that, you can achieve the goals that you want for yourself. So really believing that has allowed me to set more ambitious goals. And even thinking about, I was listening to the podcast with Jeff Gunther, and thinking about what will be my, do I want to do a side business, and what would that be, and letting my creativity kind of roll in that regard. Yeah,
that was fun to hear how he just kind of, he would see a need and think about like, how could I kind of do this better? I'm wondering if you would join me for a listener question. A question came in that's actually kind of perfect for you.
Great.
That I think you can answer even better than I can. I shouldn't say even better than I can, but I think you can answer better than I can. Listener question. Bianca asks, why is there this notion that we can only begin private practice or start our career when we're fully licensed? And why is that continuing today?
I think there's a couple things. I think one of the things is that there is this sort of I think we are still learning as interns. And so being comfortable with owning that and not trying to pretend to be something that you're not, like, especially in marketing, and being very clear about, I have a supervisor, I'm working on this. I have a lot of experience and I've done a lot of training and X, Y, or Z, but I'm also still learning. And I think actually being vulnerable in that way with clients allows them to feel more comfortable with you.
Hmm.
Clinically, because then they're able to be vulnerable and see you're modeling how to be kind of okay with where you are at that moment. So I think that's one of the things is it's really hard to do that, to put in your marketing material that, because it's kind of hard to describe what an intern is to people who are not familiar with, I think, our field. So that's one thing. And I think the second thing is that it's a big undertaking. You have to really know how to run a business. And I mean, I came from working in nonprofit theater, so I had no idea how to run a business. But I went and got some training and learned. Yeah, so I think there's kind of, we're not always as well prepared as therapists to run our own businesses, but we can get the training and we can succeed as interns.
Absolutely. I think there's something too about that influences this that comes maybe from licensed people who themselves felt like they needed to wait until they were licensed to start their businesses, that this sort of gets passed down in this way.
Mm-hmm.
Like this idea of, well, you got to pay your dues. Like as an intern, I didn't make any money. And so you're not going to make any money either, you know? And I don't think it's like malicious in any way. But I think if all you're talking to are therapists who have had that experience, then it's hard to look at what the options actually are. And I think clients mostly, I like what you said about just being completely who you are. And in some ways, I think clients can see the strength of being closer to all that training, you know, that you were just more recently in grad school and in these traineeships and learning all of this stuff. And your learning is really up to date and cutting edge. So I think feeling really confident about your own training and the kind of therapy you're doing can really help.
And this kind of just happened, I guess, by luck for me, but I happened to be in my last internship when I worked at an agency. I worked at SF Therapy Collective, and they have kind of a private practice model. So when I moved into private practice, I was able to take some clients with me, so I wasn't starting out with zero. And I think that's something that I think more interns, if they were aware of that, when you're picking your later kind of internship placements, to really think about your practice. And if you know you want to go into private practice, find an internship that will help you do that.
Oh, what a great idea. Yeah. And to maybe even talk to some people who've been through that internship about what that transition was like.
Yes.
So, Tom, you're really good at using social media. Can you tell us a little bit about what's worked for you, what platforms you like the best, how that's been?
Yeah, I like social media a lot because I think it's a way to kind of so I love to blog. So I really like to write about issues that I find important to my right fit client. And so finding a way so you can blog and blog and blog and nobody could ever read it. But if you share it on social media, there's a better likelihood that people will read it and it will start conversations. And so especially LinkedIn has been a fantastic way to connect with colleagues. So there are a couple, you can join groups on LinkedIn. And so I'm part of 4 or 5 groups that I'm pretty active in. So I'll go on a couple times a week and read other people's articles and write comments. And then I will share my articles there. And some articles hit a chord and get 18 comments. And it's a good way to kind of start the conversation. And also I've then taken some of those relationships and had coffee dates with people who live locally, or, I think it is a really good way to build a network from online to real life.
Nice. Yeah. Tell us about other platforms.
Yeah. So I also like creating images for my blog posts. So Instagram is a great way to do that. So you can share the image, especially if your image has a little bit of text in it, like, whatever the main focus of that blog post is, you can share that on Instagram, and it's a way to get in front of other people.
And do you use Canva to create your images, or what do you use to create those?
No, I actually use Quotes Cover. Quotes Cover, yeah. So it's a free website that you can go on there and you can upload. So there's a couple great websites where you can get free stock images.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I read a post recently that you have to really make sure that they are free and that they have been shared by the author, but there are some sites that are better for that than others. So do a little research on that if that's something that you're interested in doing. And then from there, you can take the image and you can kind of tweak it or add a filter and then add some text. And it's a great thing to add to a blog post. And it only takes about, I mean, depending on how much fun you want to have with it, you could do it in 10 minutes or you could do it in, you can play with it for an hour.
Or a minute. Like, like I just used Canva right before we got on Skype. And you'll find this in the alumni group. I just was like wanting to check in with people. I just chose an image. I put text over it saying like, tell us what goals you're working on, and posted it. And I looked and I was like, okay, that took like 60 seconds. So yeah, not that I would take 60 seconds if it was actually a blog image, but yeah, it's so fun. So yeah, and Canva is another one of those. So I'll put those in the show notes. Do you use Twitter, or are those the ones you use, like LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, so I right now I just use Instagram, Facebook, Google Plus, and LinkedIn, because so I just use 4, and then I also using some of your logic, I've created a checklist so that when I finish writing a blog post, I have 10 items that I do. I create the image, I post here, 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 and here. I check the SEO for before I publish it. Creating that to-do list has made the blog posting process pretty streamlined.
Yeah, and then you don't really have to think too much about it.
Yes.
Tom, where can people find you and throw compliments at you?
Well, my therapy website is www.tombruettherapy.com. So it's TOMBRUETT and then therapy. So there's 3 T's in a row. And I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
Yeah. So if people wanted to interact with you, LinkedIn, it sounds like, is one good way. And then the other segment that I have in this podcast is called Snark Moment. Snark Moment. Is there anything about this field or about the process of growing your private practice that you've ever felt irritated or snarky about?
I think that for me, I am better one-on-one. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it can be intimidating to go into group settings. So I've felt a little bit like, and I think a lot of this was in my head more so than actually in the networking groups. But anytime I've, decided to go to a networking party or a, conference or something like that, I am always a little nervous and unsure if I'm going to fit in with the cliques. But I think as a whole, most therapists are incredibly welcoming and warm, and it's pretty much an irrational fear that I've had to conquer.
Okay, that wasn't very snarky, but I'll totally take that. But I mean, you're not a very snarky person. But yeah, I don't like networking events, like parties and things like that are kind of expressly for networking. And I know they can be good, and every single person at them is going to be probably fantastic. But I prefer getting into small groups or one-on-one situations. And so I pretty much avoid networking events, which sometimes people think is funny because I've got like the 30-day networking challenge and like encourage people to network. But, it just shows you how there's so many ways to do it. But if I do end up at a networking event somehow, then I always am looking for like, how can I, leave? No, how can I, like take one of these cool people to coffee instead sometime?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. That's helped me too, is to go in with some sort of goal. Like I'm going to get 3 business cards, or, I'm going to meet one person tonight who I connect with.
Great. Well, I'm so excited about all of your success, and that I think this is really helpful, especially for people who are unlicensed, to get to hear your enthusiasm and about how much success you've built for yourself in the last year. So thank you so much again for being willing to come into the Clubhouse.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. Get behind the scenes information and insights to improve your business at coachingwithannie.com. And a big thanks to Cosmo for editing this. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'll edit this part out where I'm trying to think about what I want to ask you next. Because I'm still new at this.